Today we're going to talk about painting larger and also about how to develop that painting as you go. So let's get started. I had a pretty good idea of what I wanted to do with this photograph. I was outdoors and I saw the three dogs and they made sort of a triangle um, area, and I thought, okay, that's something I can work off of. So I'm putting in my darkest darks first, which is pretty much what I always do. And this is the largest block that Arches makes. The size is 18 inches by 24 inches. So when you have a bigger painting, first of all, you have to bring out bigger brushes. So the brush that I'm using is probably a 14 flat, and I'm not going to use anything probably smaller than a 14. You know, there's just more real estate to cover, and so you need a bigger brush. You also need to mix more paint. The nice thing about this is that it frees your arm. You stop working from your wrist and instead are using your full arm, you know, your elbow up to your shoulder, which allows me to be a little bit looser, which I really admit that I like. So, so I'm putting in the dark spots, dark shapes for the dogs because that was the most important thing. There's always a compelling reason to paint something for me, and for me, it was not just that I like these three dogs, but that I liked the way they were in relationship to each other. I could almost see their personalities a little bit. The other thing that comes into play here is this is my backyard, and you end up being very familiar with your own surroundings. So I've looked at these things many, many, many times. I've also painted these things many, many times. So I'm drawing on that knowledge as I work, which is really helpful. Let's see. So the darks are pretty much in, and now like I said, what this video is going to be about is developing the painting as you go. There are going to be some starts and stops along the way. I made the dog's face there too dark, so I applied some water and blot it back up. I'm not ready to make all my dark decisions yet. I'll make some beginning ones just to block it in and then make decisions from there. Now I think I'm going to start to go into the background. Now I want the background, nope, nope, I was wrong. Instead I'm putting some midtones in on the dogs. What this is going to do, the establishment of this, what it's going to do is it's going to allow me to key off of these dogs. In other words, I know my darks because I've established them in my dogs in that chair. I know my midtones, I'm establishing them now in the dogs, and so I'm going to match those midtones everywhere else that I need a midtone in the painting. And by midtone, I mean the value of, not the color. And so that's what's happening here. It's almost like drawing an outline before you write an essay or a composition. These are my bullet points. This is the absolute, these are the value spots that I want to hit. My color spots of value, I call them. And I'm going to continue to use those color spots of value. See, the dog, I mixed a gray there for that dog, but that's going to be the same value as what I put in the other dogs. I'm staying mid-toned here. I'm following my plan. And meanwhile, on the side, I'm making color dabs, and I don't think I used a value finder for this at all because I painted long enough that I'm pretty familiar with what my color mixes and values are. So I didn't put the dabs in, but I just wanted to talk this through because this was a painting that required some thought. You know, it wasn't the photograph didn't give me all the information that I needed in order to complete this painting, and I'll get to the key place where I think I made a pretty good decision. I'm not done with this painting yet. I'm going to work on a little bit more today and probably tack that on to the very end of this video. All right, so now I'm putting in the light parts of the collie in the front. I used a triad to do that. You know, if you've watched my videos, you know that anytime I can use three colors to accomplish one value mass, I'm going to do it. And so that's what I did. That was a triad used in there. This is a neutral that I used for the little dog, and I'm going to use it again. Again, I mix all my neutrals, and I'm using a limited palette so that things go together well. Now you can see that I put in some what look like light spots, but they're not. I mean, what they are is just placeholders for right now, because I don't use white out at all. This is the building. The building was, I would say, lighter than mid-toned. So now I've really established my values. I've got my darks, I've got my midtones, and I've got my lights, and of course the whites of the paper. Now I am referring to the photograph down below at the same time. All right, time to get into the background. Now, I'd have to put some thought into the background because the background in general, you know, in a photograph, you have to be careful because a background can be just as defined as the foreground. And I knew that I wanted the background to look more diffused, as if it was further away. So, so I'm going to need to do that. In other words, I want less detail, less emphasis. So I brought out a round brush for this because I also wanted to put some texture in. You know, there are a lot of things going on here. You're talking about the colors, you're talking about the values, you're talking about texture, you're talking about busy spots, quiet spots. You know, when you get into a big painting like this, there's a lot to consider. It's just the same as really a smaller painting. It's just, uh, um, I don't know, it just feels like there's more to consider. Of course, you're considering exactly the same things in a small painting. It's just that you have fewer decisions to make in a smaller painting and more decisions to make in a larger painting. That's that's pretty much sounds ridiculous, but if you compare it to cooking a meal, you know, you cook like a meal of one course, and that's a small painting, and you know, this is a painting of like 3 or 4 courses. There's just more to consider, you know, more ingredients and more to consider in terms of the flow and the progression. That might be the worst analogy of all time, but I like to use food analogies because they work for me. So the background's going in, and if I squint, they are just they're slightly, yeah, they're slightly darker than the midtones that I've already put in. You know, the other thing I've talked about before in when you're using photographs is just be careful because photographs tend to show darks darker than they really are, and they tend to show also grays. And I try to compensate for that by making my darks not as dark as what appears in a photograph, and also eliminating the grays by using a color or a neutral that I've mixed instead of a gray. Because if you use too much gray, for my eye anyway, if you use too much gray, things dull down really quickly, and I don't want, I don't want to match the photograph. That's not my goal. My goal is to represent what I saw on that day. It was a bright sunny day, and the dogs were in the shade with me, and that's really what I wanted to convey. So around here, this always happens to me in a painting. I don't know if this happens to you, but around here, I get almost like a little stuck or bored. I don't know what it is, but I have a lot of white left in the painting. And and yet I've sort of taken care of the parts that really interested me, which was the dogs. Oh, that's a problem. You know, it's a cognitive problem because I have to stay interested in the whole thing. I was going to put some clapboards in, but again, I adjusted and changed my mind because I thought, no, stick with the plan. You wanted the background to be more diffused and less busy, so take out any details that are going to be in the background. Then I went away for a while to consider. I've got 3 dogs, and then boom, I thought I need a burning red phone booth. You know, sometimes a painting needs a burning red phone booth in it, and this one did. And so I was able to put a ball in there. Without that ball, I just have a sea of green. Now, this wasn't in the photograph at all, of course, and I might have, I almost wish I had put that ball a little bit more to the right, but you know, it's done. So, or that decision's done. And then I put some red in the dog's collar, that second dog in the midground, in order to pick up the information from that red ball. Because to have that red ball all by itself was just too much of a color spot of value, calls too much attention to itself. But I needed that red. I needed that red. Without it, I was going to have just those dogs floating in a sea of green. Now I'm putting in the different foliage. And you know, when you look at grass, there are lots of different pictures in grass and lots of different patterns. And I kind of enjoy this. This is with a pretty large brush. Now I'm going to need to go back today and, like I said, and probably put something, I can't put my finger on exactly what I want to refine here, but something needs to be refined. I think it might be that that back dog needs a little bit more darkness so that that triad of the 3 dogs really shows up as a triad of 3. But I have to say, I'm really happy with the ball. Because I'm trying to get looser, and you can see the reflections coming off the bottom of the ball as well, which kind of pleases me. So that's where the painting is right now, and I just wanted to show you that you can take a photograph and play with it, you know, make decisions about it, and stay consistent, and then play with it a little bit. In other words, what I'm saying is that ball wasn't in there at all, and I plunked it in there, and I think it works. This is Future Joe. I did come back, and you'll see that I darkened the dog in the back, and I don't know what else I did, not much, but I did feel like the dog on the left needed a little bit more darkening. So remember to keep the white, your paper white, your paints wet, mask for value, mix for color. Please join my YouTube channel, and I'll see you next time. Okay, bye-bye.